Hi everybody, thanks for being here. My name is Linnea Baker and this is my first video. A friend encouraged me to start a YouTube channel, so here I am. It's a little bit, I feel a little vulnerable, but that's what I want. You know, the older we get, the more we realize how short life really is, and things that matter start to sift towards the surface, and you start prioritizing life differently. So I wanted to start this channel to journal some of my journey, and to also be real, be authentic, be true to myself, to share my story with my kids and my friends and others, just so they have it and remember where they came from. And I want it to be a place where you feel like you belong. It's all inclusive for anybody, regardless of, you know, age, race, religion, gender identity. You're all welcome here. I hope you feel that and know that. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to call this yet. I'm thinking Notes of Hope with Linnea, and it will be Notes of Hope on mental health and humor and spiritual growth, and I want to share some of my lived experience, and also some tips for you maybe that might help coping skills. I'm a mental health specialist, and I do a lot of crisis intervention, and I'm a first responder crisis intervention specialist. I'm also a spiritual care counselor and grief counselor, and I also do state trainings for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So that's a little bit of my profession. I'm also an inspirational speaker and a piano artist. I love to write, whether it's journaling, expressive writing, writing stories. It's my love language. I also write music, and I enjoy that so much. I've been playing piano since I was 4 and writing music since 3rd grade. And I'll tell you a secret. I hate reading music. I can read music, but to me, music is personal. I don't like playing other people's music, to be honest, because that's their music. And for me, it has been a way of expressing myself, an altar to God where I lay out all of my emotions. And if it touches someone else's heart, then I feel like, you know, that's a part of the experience. So I like to write contemporary, semi-classical piano pieces, sometimes blues, and I also write some music with lyrics. I'm a mom of 2 adult sons, and I have a grandson who's a 1.5 years. Wow, I can't believe it. I've been married for 30 years, and I'll share my age. I'm 56, and I have never felt more confident than I have in my 50s. It's been my hardest decade, but it's been the most personal growth and spiritual growth I've ever had. So I went into the mental health field because my mom struggles with a severe mental health diagnoses, and my dad was a Vietnam vet. He passed away in 2013 with Agent Orange cancer. I grew up in a very complex home. My dad was a pastor, and but it was a very complicated life. My parents did the best that they could. I realized that, but there was a lot of generational trauma that was passed down. There was a lot of complex PTSD. There was a lot of abuse and abandonment and neglect. And I don't blame my parents. It was easy to go down that road at first. Like when I started trauma therapy 25 years ago, just feeling validated helped me. But then realizing my history with my family of origin and what they've been through. But being the oldest of three, I have two younger brothers. I was the caretaker of both my parents when my dad got really sick with PTSD from Vietnam, and my mom was very, very ill. And I was the caretaker of them since I was 11, 12 years old. In therapy terms, it's considered parentification, where a child has to take on adult roles to help care for her parents. And I was their confidant. They confided in me things that a child shouldn't have to hear. I also had to make dinners and lunches for my brothers, and as much as I love my parents, it was really difficult. My dad was a pastor, and when I was in 6th grade, he went from a fun-loving dad to a very suicidal, delusional, depressed person. He thought he was in Vietnam, and this was 10 years after he returned from the war. This was like 1978, and he had to resign as being a pastor. He started this really beautiful country church called Stillwater Hill Community Church in Duvall, Washington, where I grew up. He, along with the Longfellow family and the Hall family and Dick and Juanita Lloyd, a lot of families helped and supported the church. And then when my dad got sick, he had to resign, and we moved up into the woods, into a big rust-colored barn. My brothers slept in the loft. I slept below with my parents, and that was when I started struggling with depression and my first suicidal thoughts. And boy, the depression was so strong. Both of my parents were very actively suicidal. My mom was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and she had come from a long line of trauma and abuse and generational trauma. So I was constantly on high alert, stopping my parents physically from dying by suicide, whether it was from pills or guns. My dad thought we were in Vietnam when we lived in the woods for 2 years, and he would put traps around our house so others wouldn't be able to get to us, the enemy. So yeah, that gives you a little bit of a background of what I grew up with. And you know, a lot of people who come up through faith-based families, there's also sometimes a lot of trauma and abuse, whether it's intentional or not. And that's a lot of burden for anybody to carry. My parents went through a lot, and my brothers and I went through a lot. I was able to seek out help for my mental health struggles of depression and complex PTSD and anxiety when I was 30 years old. I got married then, and when I got married, before I got married, I should say, I had a lot of mood swings. I was told that it was a character flaw, a spiritual deficit. Nobody could put up with my mood swings, and I had a lot of, something would set me off, something small, a lot of anger and rage, and then depression, and it turned out to be trauma-induced PTSD and trauma-induced mania, which is different than bipolar. It's complex PTSD trauma that gets triggered, and you go into like a hypomania when it's activated by a PTSD trigger. So my dad was very militant, and so when I was growing up, if things were not exactly a certain way, color coordinated, if there was one glass that was dirty left out on the counter, it got thrown across the room. And the fact that my dad wouldn't let us walk behind him because he thought he would turn around and literally kill us, thinking we were the enemy. I walked on eggshells. And so I carried that into my marriage, and I started having PTSD flashbacks and nightmares. And so I ended up going to an amazing psychologist, and I also had a psychiatrist. I would not have been able to do any kind of therapy if I was not on medication. And I went on an antidepressant and a mood stabilizer and an anti-anxiety. Those literally saved my life because I was suicidal again. I was having horrific nightmares and flashbacks. And I had gone through some other trauma. I was attacked in college. And this isn't going to be a channel where I'm going to be like just sharing all this negative stuff. But I wanted to give you a little background because if you were to know me, I love to laugh. I may come across as sometimes superficial, but I've been through a lot. And I like to see humor in life because it's what has gotten me through the hard things. And I had survival skills, but I didn't have healthy coping skills until I started learning some. And then after I went through a lot of trauma therapy, I did EMDR, which is bilateral eye stimulation, eye movement reprocessing, desensitization. I did that for a while, and then I also did internal family systems model. That trauma therapy has healed me the most, but what helps me doesn't necessarily mean it will help you. So everybody kind of has to learn their own way to navigate, but I want to offer lots of tips and tools, and maybe you can try some of them and see what works for you if you're feeling like you're struggling, because I know a lot of people struggle to reach out for help or even go to a counselor. It could be because of stigma, or your family shames you for it. Maybe it's your religion or your culture doesn't allow you to talk about it. But if we don't process our emotions or trauma or anxiety gets stored in our body, and it comes out as depression, chronic fatigue, autoimmune disease, so many different things. So after I went through 10 years probably of trauma therapy, I went back to school and went into the mental health field because I wanted to help others. I felt like if I can make it through on the other side, I wanted to shine my little light and be, it sounds so cliche, but to give hope to others. And so I started writing and speaking, sharing, teaching workshops for coping skills, and it's turned into a passion of mine. So that's a little bit about my background. I will say this, I do know what it's like to also be hospitalized for depression and suicidal thoughts. I had postpartum depression after I had my first son, who was going to be 27 in August. And after I had him, oh my goodness, the depression was more debilitating than my PTSD depression. I couldn't even function. And so I ended up being in the hospital for a month. Actually, you know what? That wasn't after my firstborn. That was after my secondborn, who is 23. Yeah, so I'm getting old. But I ended up in a psychiatric hospital, and you know what? That rock bottom, that was my rock bottom. It became a foundation on which I started to build a new life. And I turned my pain into purpose, and I crawled out of that hole, and I learned coping skills. I went to group therapies. I went to individual therapies. I was continuing to be on medication. They had to change my medication because it stopped working after I had my second son. And all of that to say, the medication helped me process therapy like cognitive behavior therapy, internal family systems therapy, dialectical behavior therapy. I know these are therapy terms, but I would not have been able to even practice what I was being taught if I didn't feel stable. And the antidepressant, it's like walking around before medication. It was like looking at everything through a really hazy lens. And then when I was put on medication, it was like putting glasses on for the first time. Everything was clear. I didn't have brain fog. It was a gift. And I know everybody's experience can be different. I will have to say, there have been times when some of my medication made me too drugged up, as a lot of people say, too lethargic. I couldn't think, but it was just an adjustment of dosage. And so I'm really sensitive to medication. So what a normal person could tolerate, I had to take like a quarter of that. And I worked along with my doctor with that. And that literally saved my life. The mood stabilizer took away my rage. I could go to 0 to 60 over something because I was so used to walking on eggshells. I was constantly worried about being in danger. So the mood stabilizer, that saved my marriage at the time and a lot of relationships, and I felt like a normal human being. My anti-anxiety helped me leave my house, helped me start becoming a part of NAMI and doing public speaking. That was exposure therapy. That's a whole other story. But I want to say, whatever journey you're on, there's no right or wrong way. And I'm here to just share part of mine. Today, I just take a low dose of antidepressant, and I have an anti-anxiety medication that I take for emergencies, like when my dad passed away, things like that. But I don't usually have to take it. A whole bottle lasts a whole year for me. So this past year, I was diagnosed with 2 types of breast cancer, invasive types, last October, and it came as a surprise. There was no lump, and my oncology surgeon even confirmed. He said, you wouldn't have known you had cancer, and because you couldn't feel it. And it was only because I went to my annual physical mammograms and it was caught, and I was shocked. It doesn't run in my family. Nobody in my family has it. I think my aunt had it, and she went through it. But so I had to go through a mastectomy last March, a few months ago. I have 2 more surgeries to go for some other treatments and reconstruction. I'm still going through treatments, and I am also going through a divorce after 30 years of marriage. We have been separated for 2.5 years. A lot of thought went into it, a lot of counseling, and I will just say I was the one who initiated it for certain reasons, but there's always, everybody has their own story and reasons, and I will say I did everything I could to try to make it a healthy marriage until I couldn't anymore. And that's when I realized I needed to step out on my own. That was really hard. So it's finally at a place where it's amicable now. And you never know what people are going through. I know people have judged me because a lot of my friends don't believe in divorce, but then there's those who completely understand. And it's not without good reason. It wasn't because I was just bored or there was someone else. It wasn't that. And I'm not going to talk bad about my son's father, but there's always, you're never going to know the whole story or what goes on behind closed doors when it comes to relationships. So I'm just going to express my side as healthy as I can and just say I'm doing the best I can, and I'm glad that I am now in a place that's a healthy environment for me. My youngest son Noah lives with me by his choice. My son Cole lives next door. So I'm happy. But between navigating that, navigating the care of my mom, she lives an hour away in a assisted facility. This last year, I had to hand over the care of her to the state because it was just too much for me while I was going through cancer. I've always been the one who takes care of everybody else, and I'm so thankful for my support team at the Salem Cancer Institute, my therapist, my nurse navigator, my surgeons, my financial assistants, case managers. They have been amazing, and they have validated me in ways that have just filled me up. And so if you're going through cancer, please reach out and utilize the resources they have if you can and if you need them. They've been such a gift for me. So I just wanted to say that I'm happy you are here. I'm happy that I'm doing this because we all need new dreams, new goals, new experiences. So starting a new YouTube channel is something that I'm going to enjoy. It's already going on 25 minutes. I will be sharing different things about myself. I'll be sharing music. And if you have any questions or comments, I hope you keep them kind. This is scary for anybody who does this. I have a whole new appreciation for anybody who puts themselves out there. So I just want to thank you for stopping by, and I hope you have a wonderful day and can do one small act of kindness for someone else and an act of kindness for yourself. Okay, bye.